keyboard. I think at one point even has his chin tapping on the keyboard. And so the letters are coming up on the screen, and it talks about mom saying, oh, you made an M, or you made a B. And then activating the text to speech to hear what's going on the screen. And I was thinking about how some of us in those moments might go, oh, he's not ready for this tool. Or let's cover up some of the alphabet here and just give him access to the letters of his name, because we want that sequence of the letters of his name. And how in this example, it was all about exploration. It was all about making that connection, because at one point he's looking down at the keyboard and he's looking up at the screen. And I loved what the authors had to say about this. I love what they said about what he's learning. So I'm going to read just a couple of those points that they talk about him learning. So they talk about him being introduced to a few things in this experience. They talk about when I'm banging my hands, squiggles, the letters of the alphabet, show up on the computer. Sometimes these squiggles go together, and sometimes there's spaces in between. The squiggles have names, and they're spoken, sometimes by the computer and sometimes by his mom. And then some combinations of the squiggles produce something I recognize, like my name. At one point, his mom models writing his name or typing his name. And then my mother is very happy when I make these squiggles. And so he's already getting, that positive feedback from his mom about what that writing experience is. So this chapter is all about the next slide, Sari, tells us kind of the goals of this chapter. We're looking at what does emergent writing look like over time, getting off to a good start, and then supporting growth towards conventional writing. And I hope that in our discussions then, we are able to share those stories that our students have taught us as we've introduced tools and given them time to explore. I wanted to show one quick little clip that showed up on Facebook that a parent posted that I thought was such a great example of emergent writing working towards conventional writing. So we'll see if I can do this. It's on my document camera. So I'll share my screen. We're watching a movie, and in the background, they heard the child's device say Christmas wish list or something like that, Christmas list. And so they went to investigate what was happening with the student and their device. And so this is what they found. The sound is not, there's not much going on with the sound, but. So you could see that okay? So she was using her device, and she had that pencil out, and there were strings of letters, some words in there, sometimes spaces, sometimes not. I thought it was a great example of emergent writing. As we hear those two examples, does anybody else have some student examples or stories of emergent writing? Well, throughout.
Well, and how motivating is a Christmas list?
Exactly. And that's a big part of it is, are we motivated to do this task? Probably not motivated to write, the letter C over and over again on a piece of paper, but getting that Christmas list out. I know I got my second grader writing.
I was going to say, yeah, a lot of the people can spell Lego now.
Right. All right, I'll have you share the PowerPoint again, Sari. So there's quite a few OTs on that I recognize. And, we talk about this emergent writing as pre-writing, and this is a big phase that doesn't have a lot of definition, although we learn about the sequence. But I love that we have a definition here that emergent writing can be defined as all of the writing behaviors and understandings of learners of any age that proceed and develop into conventional writing. So all these explorations and experiments. And the research section talked about how students need that experience to then be able to go through the developmental phases. And so I thought about some of my students that have more complex communication needs and physical access needs, and how, you know, in second or third grade, I might have figured out an awesome tool and put it in front of them and thought that those conventions would come really quickly. And am I giving them that time to have all these emergent experiences that need to come before that? That kids that can pick up the marker get to go through in experiencing print and the tools. All right, Sari. So they talked about Byington and him having this article of promoting preschool emergent writing. And so that's a little bit hard to see, but it shows that developmental process that I was talking about that kids go through for writing. And then in the book also, they give examples of both in technology and using writing tools, what that might look like. So emergent writing progresses through fairly predictable stages when children have such experiences. So I felt like that was just loud and clear. This whole chapter is the experiences. And so that's the piece we want to get to. And that's all of us brainstorming what those experiences might be. But this is a great chapter for those of you, who work with all types of kids on the development. Okay, so children's growth and understanding writing is more dependent on experience, here we go again, than on age. And so whatever age, whether it's that second or the third grader that I'm just introducing that writing tool to, they still need all that experience with the tools and the print. Okay, so they talk about 2 prerequisites, something to write with and something to write on, and that's not always conventional. So I thought it'd be a great time for those of you who've read the chapter or haven't read the chapter to just do a quick brainstorm in the chat on some different writing tools that we've used over the years just for this great exploration time of putting letters together and experimenting. So we'll just take a moment of quiet and have you brainstorm in the chat and then jot some things down, and then we'll share out our ideas.
So Kristen, can you just restate again what you want people to brainstorm?
So something to write with and something to write on. So go to the next slide, Sari. What are some maybe unconventional ways you've provided students with opportunities to have emergent writing experiences? What might they be writing with, and what might they be writing on? What tools might they use? We can go to the next slide, Sari, to just like, here's where I was going, but you guys are going to have a lot of ideas too. So thinking of things you've used for kids to explore writing. So I'm seeing things pop up. Stencils, letterboards. Anybody want to share out? So it's just not my voice here.
I just know one time I was working with a girl with cerebral palsy, and she had enough motor impairment that she couldn't write very accurately, although she could manipulate materials. And so using stamps on a cookie sheet or magnetics, magnetics on a cookie sheet, or I think they maybe even use like the magnetic words, like the magnetic poetry words or whatever, allowed her to compose, stories like the peers did. And then the teacher or the peer educator would Xerox it off. So she then had something to turn in, just like everybody else. And she felt so, she just felt very proud and included. And so it was very easy and very accepted as well.
Natalie, I missed what you said about how you printed it to turn in.
Well, since it was magnetic words, they could take a Xerox copy of it, just take it to the copy machine. And then it was a printed, just a Xerox copy of what she did. So she could hand in her paper, or it was part of the book or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I love that, because I think often, you know, we might provide some of these experiences, but then we don't capture it as their writing. So I love that piece of taking the picture and turning it in, taking it home, something they composed. Other ideas of things you've used to help students have emergent writing experiences?
I've done a lot of having the kids with like shaving cream on the table, and then I'll draw a letter with my finger and then have them imitate what I drew. Or perhaps if they aren't really doing letters yet, we might be doing just the shapes, like a square, circle, triangle, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And same thing with kinetic sand.
Yeah. Very motivating. And as we're doing that, labeling and celebrating what we're seeing. So I see using apps on the iPad, stencil letters, again, tracing in the sand idea, Play-Doh letters, rubber stamps, a picture collage. Yeah, great expression of ideas. A light box, alphabet wizard, an app, and UDoodle. So even like drawing apps on the iPad where they're doodling and they don't have to manage the tool. It's a great idea. I wish I would have put a communication device on here. I'm not sure why that's not here, because, you know, of course.
Well, you have an eye gaze one, kind of.
I do. I have a low-tech board,
Mm-hmm.
but
I also do like those stamps for the Play-Doh that you have in the bottom left. And I was thinking, what's that little handle thing that you could put on that too, so you can have your hand in there?
yeah, universal cuff
Mhm.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that for you know, sometimes kids might want to go straight to the mouth with the Play-Doh, but
Mhm.
having the Play-Doh flat and then having that in your hand is neat.
And wow, having letters appear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think of how much as an OT, you know, we did this kind of exploring, but often I was so quickly trying to go towards, okay, now we're going to produce
Right.
this. And if I had all that to do over again, I would be celebrating a lot more and letting go of the pressure of meeting that goal that's down the road, because they're going to get there with all this exploration.
And taking
there's a
pictures
quote-
along the way to just
Yeah.
remember, document.
And the other thing I think that that this chapter really brings out is that it does take time. They need the time. And even towards the end of the chapter with that predicted writing activity, they spend an entire week, 5 days on that one activity, and then create multiple opportunities for writing all throughout the whole day. But like that one activity isn't just a one and done on Monday, the
Yeah.
entire experience, which is key. The
Yes.
theme in this chapter lasted the entire week. And so I agree with you, Kristen, working in the schools, it's like you're on this time frame, you got to get these measurements captured or to where, and I think sometimes the classrooms move quickly. The pacing of the classroom tends to move rather quickly sometimes. So yeah, I'll just really considering how to allow more time for the experiences to kind of be visited often.
Yes. And I think about how these types of experience allow the child to lead and us to follow and us to model, us to say, whoa, you just made an A, and experience it with them with their lead. Whereas if you're putting a worksheet in front of them and we are copying this letter of the week, it's just a different learning experience than led by them with tools to explore. The book also has a figure. Let's see what page that's on, it's the next slide, Sari. Page 71 has a chart of ideas. So I thought those of you who know how could use the annotation tool just to put a star or put a stamp on something on here that you might like to try. You've tried before and it's been successful. Using that tool is, how do we do that, Sari?
If you go to, I think it's in the top of your screen
View
on
options.
mine when I'm sharing different.
Oh,
There
there
should
we
be
go.
something that says view options, and then you can find annotate as one of your options.
So your pictures could be covering it. So I had to move my pictures of all of you to the side, and then I can get a stamp.
And then, yeah, in annotate, you can find the stamp. And Kristen, did you say put a stamp
Yeah,
on?
put a stamp on something or a heart or something you might like to try.
Mom, is there school today?
Yes, there's school today.
Oh.
Dad's gonna take you. And that's, thanks, Josh. Okay, so if I wasn't on annotate, I would have been muting myself, but I'm on annotate, so it puts a star on the mute button. So just a future note for those of you.
Okay.
I guess
Now
we'll keep moving on because there's lots of other types of ideas to share. that
Okay,
come
I
from
just
this
need to
chapter.
clear it. There we go.
So she spent quite a bit of time, the author spent quite a bit of time talking about celebrating students' writing. And I loved the examples and kind of just giving real specifics on how to celebrate, listening with interest to the student who reads aloud what they've written, tell them it's wonderful. And the more specific you can get and focused on what they wrote, the better you're connecting with them. And then encouraging the student to write more about the topic you're interested. Anybody else want to share from this chapter and how you celebrate student writing?
Well, last year, this is Susanna. Hi. Last year with my middle schoolers, I started them writing about themselves, and they loved that. So, and however, we accepted whatever tool, whether it was pictures or drawings, or some of them were doing words, and they just loved getting up and sitting in a chair and talking about what they wanted to talk about. So that was real encouraging for them. And it was fun.
Today during social group, we were talking about things we were thankful for. And so the students, I had them pull out paper, write down maybe one word or write down the whole sentence, depending on their abilities. And then they walked up to the computer because I was zooming into the classroom, and they would show me their writing, and then we would sing a song like Brittany is thankful for string cheese and that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
I think we have the same thankful list. That is cute. Anytime you can make it into a song. And then I also like sharing about yourself with Susanna's example. I think sometimes it's hard to remember, like when you're listening with interest, they're reading what they've written. Sometimes, or as they're writing, it's like hard to not jump in and say, oh, or that balance of, oh, that, we could do that like this, and balancing and correcting versus like just letting, what's your goal, right? Is it like getting the writing out, or is it, convention?
Okay, we'll go on, and then when we go into breakout rooms, we can share more about how we celebrate student writing. And I love this. It kind of goes towards what Sari's saying, that thoughtful teachers keep a record of student intended meaning without disturbing the student's product or feeling of ownership. So I love that, because we're not trying to shape what they're saying or have it make more sense. We're just noting what their intended meaning is and celebrating what that looks like. Okay, so I loved this. Anybody want to share about this? It's on page 73. If anybody got there and wants to share about this, I loved it.
I liked it too, and one of the things I like about it is it's very simple but direct. I think people come into a classroom, whether it's visiting teachers or parents or whatever, and they want to be helpful, but sometimes their helpfulness isn't necessarily helpful, right? It kind of defeats what you're working on, or they end up doing too much, or so I think I like this because it's very directive in terms of, this is what we're doing, here's what you can do, here's what you can say.
Yeah, sometimes
And then it allows for those mistakes or to be seen, if you want to call them mistakes or whatever. So then the teacher can still see where the student is. But so I liked it. I liked it seems a little, some people might seem it's a little bold, I guess, to kind of say, this is what we're doing and this you can do within that. But I liked it.
We've been as a staff kind of reading some Brene Brown, and she talks about clear is kind. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, like this, it's kind to give a clear message to folks instead of, and I think it's also nice for other providers, like as an SLP coming in, this is really helpful clue to see what they're doing for writing and how to help and not help.
I co-treat with my OTs quite often, and whenever we incorporate writing, I always will turn to them and say, like, how should I be supporting the student? Like, I don't know what I should do right now for them. And they'll show me if it's a matter of what I say or showing them a grip or whatever the case might be.
That's a great
That's what this made me think of.
Yeah, really. It's nice that you're co-treating. That's a nice just phrase to use for us to remember every once in a while, right? Like, how should I be supporting this student? I love that.
I think about, I had to step away for a moment, so I didn't hear all the wonderful things. I had to get a child out the door. But I love this because in this, especially in virtual learning, that parents are really tied to the success of their students. And sometimes they're facilitating. And so they have this pressure of it's more about getting this right. And so we miss opportunities for that exploration. So setting that expectation of parents and assistants, take the pressure off, it's okay, so.
And I think, you brought up the paraeducators or the assistants. I think that they sometimes as the teacher or the therapist or the person who's kind of in the more assessment, looking at things in an assessment sort of way, it is kind of hard. If you don't have some clear guidelines like this, it is hard to gauge where the student actually is. And there's been many times I have thought, okay, is this the student or is it the paraeducator who's with the student? Because so I think even this would be great for for the paraeducators to understand too, that it's not a reflection on them and their job if the student is making these errors, but you really have to see, the teacher really needs to see what's happening so that then they can intervene and provide the next level or backtrack a little bit and provide some reinforcement. So so I think helping the paraeducators have some specifics, like this they would probably really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's only natural to think that we're instructing by correcting. I mean, that's,
Mhm.
I think, what we're most prone to do. And I think about a time I had some students on computers with word banks on the bottom, and they were doing some amazing writing that was definitely emergent writing. And I heard a paraeducator to the side going, oh, let's fix that. And it's because I didn't express maybe what the goal was for that time, that this really is their time to express, how they're going to express, and learning to use the tool was a big thing. They'd only used this tool for a couple weeks. All right, so emergent writing by definition lacks convention. So we're not trying to get at those conventions. We're letting them explore. And pairing with pictures, pair with student read alouds of the text, gives us an understanding of what they're getting at. And I love this piece about expect variability in student readings over time. Because that's another time where we might correct, well, that's not exactly what it says here, but they might read it 3 different ways, 3 different times. And that's part of their emergent writing process of expressing their meaning of that text.
In virtual learning now that a lot of the platforms have the ability to, also record. So maybe students do their writing on paper somehow, you take a picture, and then they can also record or record using their communication system, talking about what they're doing. It is nice that there's that option, many options to kind of share that way.
And it makes me think maybe, like we do with speech, when a preschooler or other child will say something and they don't say it correctly, but we just bounce back, oh yeah, and then we, without even missing a beat, we repeat what they wanted to say. And I think with writing too, we can celebrate that they got that meaning out, and in the process they'll be learning how to do those corrections on their own without being discouraged or frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So I think next, Sari might say predictive writing. Okay, let's do breakout rooms. And we were going to focus on day-by-day writing demonstration ideas. If you have the book, then you guys can pull out some ideas from the book, but also just from your experience in the classroom and in therapy. What are some day-by-day writing demonstrations that you do to help students with this emergent writing experience?